Welcome to Toy Business Unboxed, your gateway to the secrets of the toy industry. Here, Jason Shea, a toy entrepreneur and expert in the field.
Every product we develop is really inspired by some of the real life experience that we have with our son.
60% of all toys last year were sold on Amazon, which is incredible.
Be passionate about it because it's a road, it's a journey.
Like when you have an idea that you think is like gonna somewhat like change the world, make things better, I'd say go for it.
We'll guide you through the enchanting world of toy design, marketing, and manufacturing. Now let the unboxing begin.
Hello, welcome to another episode of Toy Business Unboxed podcast. In this episode, we're thrilled to speak with Ellie, a game designer, an author, and an advocate for the power of play. From her early obsession with board games to founding of the Dark Imp, Ellie has dedicated her career to create innovative games that bring families together. We'll dive into some of her personal experience as a self-publisher and her transition to pitching game design to publishers, etc. So thank you so much for being on our podcast today.
It's lovely to be here. Thanks, Jason.
Yeah, so I want to start out with today's interview on like what get you started, like what sparked your love to getting into the board game industry, and how did that lead to starting designing some of the board game yourself?
I've always played board games. I'm from a big board game playing family, and so it's been like an integral part of my life for as long as I can remember. I think that's a similar story to a lot of people that end up designing games, that it's just you can't really imagine your life without games. So, and it becomes a way of relaxing, a way of connecting with people, and so it was a natural thing to sort of go into. Having said that, it took me ages to get into it. You know, I guess the other thing about games is that I've never really been very good at small talk. So in social situations, I always prefer a focus. I sing in a choir. I love seeing my friends at the choir because we're all singing and then we're chatting in between songs. And it's the same with games. We've got something that we are all doing together, an activity, a shared focus to enjoy together. In terms of how I got into it, well, I mean, I was a teacher and I started designing games for the classroom primarily. And then when I was running an education company for other teachers to use in the classroom. So that was my first real forays into game design. And it just sort of went from there.
I see. And how did your experience as a teacher really kind of influence some of your game design philosophy?
Well, I guess because I played a lot of games with the learners in school, I saw how different it was for them when they were playing a game than it was
Yeah.
if they were doing any other kind of learning, really. The whole demeanor changed as soon as I said, well, let's just play a game. And there's something very freeing about that
Yeah.
they forgot that they were learning and were able to just take part in whatever the game was. So that was really interesting to see. I also learnt a lot because I ran a behavior management consultancy with my husband, training teachers how to manage behavior better. So I learnt a lot about how to influence the behavior of others with your own behavior and the choices that you make, and how powerful how powerfully you can influence behavior in a positive and also in a negative way. You know, what kind of behaviors in you are going to trigger other people or perhaps make them feel more at ease on the other side. You know, that helped with my understanding of what makes a positive game experience and also what makes a negative game experience. So the natural for me was to go into games for families or for, you know, like a wide group of people, a wide age of people, games that spark joy, games that create experiences that bring people together rather than sort of pull them apart. So that's what I definitely try and do to create games that are memorable experiences that spark joy, spark conversation, and where people can feel at ease when they're playing, hopefully, as well as feeling excited and
Yeah.
driven to
Yeah.
do well. But that experience side of things is really, I always think about that when I'm designing a game. What kind of experience do I want my players to have? And so when I was in school, that really helped me to understand the sorts of things that are going to influence that, I think.
I see. That's very interesting. When you mentioned about the behavior
Yeah.
side of the things, and do you have do you actually implement some of those strategy as far as
Yeah.
behavior wise in some of your board game design as well?
Definitely. I mean,
Yeah.
there's definitely things that I avoid. Not always. There's always some games where I might throw those things in. There's some things that I try and avoid all the time if it's a game for families. Because, for example, I will try and make every turn quick, either
Okay.
simultaneous play or quick,
Yeah.
because sitting around watching other people make prolonged decisions is something that many
Yeah.
people really don't like, and it can
Yeah.
change how you feel about a game. That sort of game works for
True.
some people, particularly some gamers, but we're
Mhm.
talking about families here. We're talking about the
Yeah.
average family player. They
Mhm.
don't want to be sitting around and waiting for lots of people to be involved. I mean, it's a kind of another classic example is player elimination. We don't want one of the members of the family to be out of the
Mm.
game a long time before the others, because then they're not taking part in the experience.
Mm.
So, if you want people to take part in the experience, then you have to make sure it's inclusive and that you can feel like you're all still in it until the
Yeah.
end of the game. You don't want someone to feel like they're too far behind that they can't catch up.
I see.
Um, yeah, sometimes. So the other thing I do is I tend to avoid take that games, although you can see on the shelf behind me is a game called A Midsummer Night's Fair, which is a game I've got out with Gamewright, and
Mhm.
it's all about take that. So I either avoid it completely, so there's none of it in the game, or it's all got to be about that, so everybody
Okay.
knows what the experience is before they're going in there. I
I
think
see.
that the worst thing is that you can be building up a strategy, doing all these cool things for yourself. You've spent ages kind of building up an engine or something, and then
Yeah.
someone just comes and removes some of it and steals something, and then that messes with how you feel. If it's all about, oh, I'm going to mess with you and you can mess with me, then it's a different sort of thing.
Okay, yeah, that's definitely the good way to put it. And also, what I know your company also have evolved over
Yeah,
time since its exceptions. I think during the pre-interview, you also mentioned about initially you were trying to do self-publishing a lot of your
yeah,
game. Like, can you share some of the biggest challenges that you face when you are trying to do self-publishing
sure.
during
I
your early
mean,
days?
I think it's probably the same challenges that almost any self-publisher of
Mm,
games that is also designing the games would face, that
mhm.
you have to do so many different kinds of jobs that you have
Yeah.
to really be good at all of them, which is one thing, but then also want to do all of them and give each of those the time they need.
Mm,
That I think is the biggest challenge, that it's natural for people to focus on the things they want to do and the things they enjoy doing and the things they know they're good at doing, and to just
true.
keep pushing those jobs to one side that maybe they'd rather not do.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, when you are self-publishing and it's just you have to do all those things, whether you want to do those things or not. So I think that is a huge challenge for anyone that's self-publishing.
Mhm.
Um, to add to that, my first games came out about 3 months before the pandemic hit.
Oh, okay.
So that was, it was a difficult time. I
Mhm.
did I then kind of changed a bit about what I was doing and looked at games that could be, downloaded and played with people in different locations, and they went really well, but those were, like, small print and play games that are still very popular on my website.
Okay.
Um, and apart from that, I guess, yeah, the biggest challenge I had was that I wanted to design all the time. So I mean, it's back to that thing
Okay.
of what
Yeah.
do you prefer
What do
doing?
you
I
want to
just wanted
focus?
to
Yeah.
design. That
Yeah.
was the biggest challenge. Oh, and also I was decided that I was going to try and gain an audience outside the regular sort of board gaming hobby world. That
Hmm.
because I was creating games that I hoped would appeal to families, that maybe, you know, my kind of initial reason for creating the company and doing what I was doing was because I wanted to create better. I saw so many people playing such terrible games that I really wanted um, to add to, you know, the sort of availability of some better games for families.
Mhm.
Um, and I was extremely naive in terms of what that would mean and how easy or difficult that would be. So I was
Yeah.
trying to get an audience outside gaming. I was trying to hook in hotels that I hoped would put games
Oh,
in their
wow.
hotels,
Okay. That's
in, you know,
yeah.
in rooms, because I've got a bunch of games that I do sort of on coasters, and these
Yeah.
are lovely giveaways. I was talking to bars and pubs and hoping that people would play in restaurants. I was, you know, talking to self-catering accommodation
Hmm.
because I hoped that they would be interested in creating game boxes for their you know, holiday rentals. So, and that was a huge challenge and just
Yeah.
very depressing because I was trying to
Sorry to hear that.
forward in a
Yeah.
market that wasn't really ready or didn't really know
Yeah.
that they might even be looking for that kind of thing. So it
I
was
see.
naive and it was a bit gung ho, and it ended up being, you know, quite hard going. I had some
And
successes, but not enough to
I
make to
see.
warrant
And you were
Kickstarter.
trying to do all that by yourself as
Yeah,
well back then? So that's a lot to juggle, like you mentioned,
yeah,
because I think because a lot of the designer I interview, like what you just shared is people enjoy doing design, but when it comes to marketing, they really don't know
right.
how to really market the game to
Yep,
the right people
yep,
correctly. And
yep.
that because that's just like you say, that requires a whole different type of skill set
Yeah, I mean,
sometimes.
I
Yeah.
often say to designers who are thinking about self-publishing, well, look, you might enjoy design, but do you also enjoy marketing? Because
Yeah,
the design is going to end up being probably 5% of your time, and the
yeah,
marketing is going
will
to
be the
end
most of
up
the time.
being about 80% of your time,
Because
and then
that's how you put the food on the table.
right, and then the other
You have to market it.
15% of the time,
Yeah,
you're going to be, you know, dealing with manufacturers and dealing with
yeah,
art and all of the other kind of things that go into creating the product. But
mm,
the bulk of it is going to be marketing.
mhm,
So are you interested in becoming a marketer? And if you are, then great. And if you're not, then maybe don't do it. You see, I think part of
mhm.
my problem was that I'd already run a successful business, which we sold. And so I was used to running marketing. I was used to having, you know, all sorts of different strings to my bow. The thing
Yeah,
that took me by surprise was how much I loved designing games. I
mhm,
knew I could do the other things, but as
yeah.
soon as I started getting into game design, I was like, where have you been all my life? I wish I'd been doing this. And I can't
Okay.
believe I've just spent the last 15 years not designing games. So
Yeah.
it became the overriding passion that everything else kind of paled into insignificance, really.
Yeah, that kind of lead me perfectly to my next question is like, why do you make the decision to shift from self-publishing
Yeah,
to, I think right now you focus more on licensing your
yeah.
design? And what have you learned from that transition?
Well, the reason is exactly that. Now, instead of spending 5% of my time designing games, I'm spending 80% of my time designing games. The other
Mhm,
20% is still marketing, but it's a different kind of marketing.
mhm.
You know, if you want to actually be successful in terms of, you know, having published games on the shelves, you do have to make sure that you are spending time pitching and getting your games ready to pitch, and that is all the marketing side. That's the
Yeah.
sales and marketing aspect. You're just not selling a game to an individual customer, an end customer. You're selling it to a publisher.
Mhm.
So the relationship piece is very important. So it's not that there's no sales and marketing if you do that, but you are designing most of the time, and that's why, so that I can
Mm.
spend all of my time doing the fun stuff and not the rest. But I suppose it's also about what gives you energy, in terms
Mm.
of, it's not just about what you're good at or what you enjoy doing. It's about the kinds of activities that give you energy. We all have certain things that we could keep doing and keep doing and keep doing and never get tired of.
Mhm.
And ideally, that's the bulk of your job, not a tiny bit of your job. And we
Mm.
also have things which you can do, but over time are going to sap your energy and make you kind of burn out. And
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
about making sure that most of the stuff you're doing is giving you energy, and that the stuff that will burn you out is small.
Yeah, that's a very important. That apply to not just designer, but any kind of entrepreneurship.
Anything, any job. It's the
So
same with anything. I mean, it's like universal, that, and of course, it's a privilege to be able to choose to work in a role that is fundamentally, primarily what you're good at,
Mhm.
or what gives you energy. But I think even for people that are having conversations with their employers about which bits of their job they want to do and which bits of their job can maybe be, even internal shifting around a team, it's a really good thing to think about. In
Mm.
terms of other things that I've learned in the transition, relationships are super important. Relationships with designers, with other designers, with publishers.
Mhm.
There's nothing like having a strong community around you and feeling like you're part of the overall, uh, you know, game and toy community. It's a
Mhm.
strong place to be. It's an exciting and innovative place to be. And I want to be part of it. So I
Mhm.
think, that when people know that you're doing that, that you're in there, and you've got time to devote to that, then that's, it's a natural sort of thing that's happened since I've transitioned into working with publishers. It's become
Mm.
so much more important than just doing it on my own, and I don't really care what other companies are doing. I'm just going to forge my own way and sell stuff to the people that I find. Now I'm very much,
Mm.
it's very important to me to have allies and relationships and a good network within the community. And there's
Th-
always more
mm.
to learn from people,
Of
and
course.
I
Yeah.
love learning. So
Does that also change the way you're designing game because now you're more thinking from the publisher point of view, and different publishers also
yep,
looking for certain type of game they want to put it into their kind of portfolio, so to
yep,
speak. And how
absolutely.
do you balance their vision versus your own creativity when you're
Well,
designing new games?
I do both. I make sure that if I have an idea for a game, I'm going to do it, whatever. I make sure I don't always spend all my time making games that are either commissioned or specifically for a brand, or even, targeted because of a wish list. I do
Mm.
some of that. I do
Okay.
a fair amount of that, but probably an equal amount of, oh, I've had this cool idea that I want to pursue. And that balance for me is really important.
Mm. Okay.
Sometimes in the
Okay.
year, I'm spending more time working on projects for specific publishers, and other times it's different. I design for brands which aren't, necessarily anything to do with the game industry. Um, but they
Mm.
might just want a board game. That's a very different experience from
Yeah.
designing a game that's been commissioned by a board game publisher.
Mm.
And I mean, I think when you're designing your own games that you don't really have a publisher in mind for, sometimes finding that match is difficult. So there's going to be a lot
Mm.
of pitching before you
Yeah.
find the right person, because it's all
True.
about finding the fit. But
Mhm.
I've pitched games Well, the one that I've pitched more than any other, I pitched 50 times to 50 different publishers.
Whoa,
It
okay.
is
Yeah,
signed. And I
yeah,
carried on pitching because it's a great game. And I
yeah.
knew it was just a matter of time before it found its fit. And they are
Mhm.
so excited, the publisher. It's coming out next year. They're so excited. And it's just, it's wonderful because I knew it was going to happen. There were lots of people that enjoyed playing the game. I mean, everybody that tested it enjoyed it.
Mhm.
It got shortlisted multiple times with different publishers and then never quite made it to
Oh,
contract.
I
So it's
see.
like,
Yeah.
I'm going to keep going with this one because I know people love it and it
Mm.
found its fit. So that's great.
Yeah.
Um, so you do have to be prepared to keep pitching.
Yeah.
Or the other thing is, of course, that sometimes publishers don't really know what they want. So, how
Okay.
can I
Yeah.
know what they
Yeah,
want if they
that's
don't
true.
know what they want? Often they say, "Well,
Yeah.
we'll know it when we see it." And
That doesn't help.
that's
Yeah.
not that helpful.
Yeah.
So, we just have to make
Mm.
I think actually it's important from a designer point of view to kind of be aware of trends in the industry. So if you
Mm.
can go to events and have a look at what's happening and the
Yeah.
games that are getting people excited, that's important. And if so that you can see the way things are going to make sure that you doing your research about different publishers is
Mm.
really important so that you're not showing them things they might not be interested in. And
Mm.
then I mean, I think if you're designing for brands like the non-gaming brands, that's a totally different thing because they lack game expertise
Yeah.
and the whole thing feels totally different. So there's in terms of what I do, there's three distinct things. Designing games for brands that are, are like a project that I've been given that I'm being paid to do.
Yeah.
Uh, Designing commissioned games for publishers, and then designing games on a whim that I then go and pitch to people, and it's totally different for the three different things, really.
Which one do you do the most out of the three currently?
Probably, I think I probably do 25%, 25%, 50%. So
Oh, okay. Okay.
most out of that is designing my own games and pitching them, and that
I
because then
see.
I can work on what I want. But I do
True,
love
true. Yeah.
having the others as well.
I see. I
It's
see.
it's a dream to get a commission from a board game publisher. I'm
Mhm.
working on a game with Buffalo Games, which is coming out next year, which is a
Mhm.
commission, and it's so exciting. And they've got
Mhm.
such an amazing team.
Mhm.
And you're working with people who really get it, and you're working with people who've been doing it for such a long time, and they're going to bring the vision to life. It's really exciting. Yeah.
Do you have any other tip for other like people that's looking into pitching games idea to publishers?
Yeah. Loads. um,
Yeah.
Make sure you know who you're pitching to. And I mean,
Mhm.
do the research on the publisher. Don't show them a big game if they only publish little ones. Don't, if they've got a box size like Oink or something, don't show them something that won't fit into that box. If they
Mm.
produce party games, don't show them a solo game. If they produce puzzle games, don't show them a party game. Think
Mm.
about what they produce, who their audience is, and make sure you're only showing them things that they might be interested in. As a
Mhm.
caveat to that, you can always say, I've got this thing I don't think you'll be interested in, at the end of a pitch.
Mm.
Or say, I've got this kind of game and this kind of game. It's not really what you normally do, but do you want to take a look? Because often they do
Mm.
want to depart from what they're doing, but
Mhm.
take as your basis their core business and you won't go far wrong.
Mm.
Practice your pitch. Don't rock up having never delivered your pitch to anyone or to yourself or to out loud. Make
Mhm.
sure you've got it down, you've got it quick.
Mm.
Focus on the hook of your game. So you're front loading your pitch with what makes your game innovative and
Mm.
interesting and different. Because if you hook them in the first 10 to 20 seconds, they're going to listen to you for longer.
Yeah.
Always think about the fact that this is a long-term relationship. It's not about getting this game signed in this meeting. If you go in with that kind of attitude, you're almost always going to fail. I mean, I've never had a game signed up then and there in a pitch. So focus on, how can I develop a relationship with this publisher that I can pitch to them on an ongoing basis for the next 10, 20 years, not just now. And follow up. Always follow up. You know, if you say you're going to send them a prototype, send them the prototype. If you say you're going to send them a sizzle reel, send them the sizzle reel. And then don't just sit there and not do it. It sounds obvious, but so many people go into a pitch and then don't properly follow up. You know, give them a month, get back to them. Give them another month, get back to them. Where are we? Are you interested? Where, you know, I've got other people looking at this game. And be relentless really in your follow-up, and you'll have
yeah. And how will you suggest people that's kind of new to this to actually find, like, actually reach out to the publisher and try to even schedule the pitch to have a chance to talk to someone from their side?
Well, it's different for different publishers. If you're pitching, if you want to pitch to mass market game companies, there are several events that you might want to attend. In the UK, there's Mojo Pitch, which is brilliant. And in the US, there's People of Play in Chicago. These are events that are designed to bring publishers and designers together. That's what they do. If it's more the hobby game market that you're aiming for, go to conventions, go to Gen Con in the US, go to Essen in Germany, and meet people at these conventions. Send them emails beforehand or contact them through their contact forms or whatever to try and schedule meetings ahead of time. I think the other thing is, don't overlook your designer community. Join playtest groups. Make sure you become, you know, in regular contact with and friendly with all of your local game designers, because these are people who already have connections, who might be able to put you in touch with publishers. And for many people, it's an easier start in to get to learn, you know, to get a friendship group and a working relationship with other designers than it is to find the publishers.
That's true. That's a good place to start. And the referral always help instead of going like a cold outreach to approach.
And honestly, people are happy to do that if they know you. So I mean, always for so I run a playtesting group in London with another designer, and people that come to the playtesting group, they bring their game. I try their game. You know, I test the game. Everybody else tests the game. I see that they're coming regularly, and then they might say to me, "Have you got any, you know, advice for pitching?" And I'll say, "Yeah, I'm going to give you a bunch of contacts." They don't ask for that, but I'm going to give you a bunch of contacts because I can see that you're putting, you know, everything into this. That you're really, you know, that you've made a bunch of changes, that you're very responsive, that you're obviously interested in it. I think it's a good game. And here are some publishers that I think, you know, it might be interested. So, you know, you don't, your designers are going to be the first port of call, I would think, for many, many people.
I see. So you kind of mentioned about a couple of different ways, like going to trade shows, participating in some local playtesting events. Any other like suggestion or advice that you will give to the listener on foster a stronger connection within the gaming community?
Well, I mean, I think that people want to know that you're going to be there for the long term. So there's a big difference between a designer having one game and basically obviously marketing it, to a designer wanting to become part of the board game industry. And the way that you approach any kind of conversation with another designer or a publisher is going to be obvious which side of that you're on. So I would say make sure that in any conversation you're really thinking about long-term relationships. of course we can have we can kind of start to spark these relationships and foster connections online as well. There's lots of online playtesting groups. There's
Yeah.
all sorts of social media communities online that you can be part of. There's lots happening on LinkedIn. There's lots happening on Blue Sky in particular, and it's worth, it's definitely a vibrant community in these places.
Yeah.
So if you're not able to attend events where you could start to meet other people, because that is probably the number one way, then you can do those things online. You can attend sort of protospiel, the in the US, the kind of prototype playtesting, conventions for unpublished games. You can attend those, and at those you're going to meet a lot of other designers, and they do things online, proto online. So those are the kinds of things that that you ought to probably be doing.
Yeah, and a lot of the board game designer I speak with also have fairly good experience, or some, of course, some have more success, some have less success with crowdfunding, which is like very popular within the board game industry. What is your experience with some of the crowdfunding platform?
Well, I've run 3 successful Kickstarter campaigns when I was self-publishing. But to me, for me, that's really about being a publisher. Now, of course, there's a spectrum, there's a line, that you could be all in on the publishing massive big games with loads of miniatures, or right down the other end, you could be publishing print and play, roll and write games, which is, yes, you're going to run a Kickstarter campaign for, yes, you still need to do all the marketing for, but in terms of the financial risk, it's much smaller, because you haven't got a physical product that you're shipping. You've got digital files, and so you don't need to have a high target. Now, if you're doing something like that, it's a really, really good way of designers starting who want to self-publish to start to get a handle on and to start to build an audience. That's really about building an engaged audience rather than necessarily a network, because if you are a jobbing designer where you are pitching and you're doing, you're not self-publishing, you're doing maybe work for hire and you're signing licenses, then you don't really need to worry about that side of things. But if you want to develop to start to foster an audience who you hope will buy your product, then that's an easy way to start, by doing roll and write or very easy print and play games where people don't need to cut out a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, I think just going back to your point in the early part of today's interview is choosing your path and which way you want to go. Either go self-publishing, or you want to go with the licensing, and also deciding on which one, just like you mentioned, give you more energy that you enjoy doing more.
But I think it's perfectly valid to not know which path is right for you and to experiment. I mean, that's exactly what I did. But also, there are plenty of designers who do both in some way or other, that have some games they're pitching to other publishers, and then they have some games that they'll bring to Kickstarter themselves. Maybe they feel like they can run one Kickstarter a year, or one Kickstarter every other year, or Kickstarters just for roll and write games, or whatever it is. And that they want to do that, and maybe in the future they're thinking about creating a bigger publishing company, but they also want to design other games that they're going to pitch to other people. So I don't think you necessarily need to, it doesn't necessarily need to be an either or. It can be a both, but I think it's about being realistic about how much time you have and what you can achieve, because when you try to do too much, you invariably don't do anything particularly well, and that's the danger. So working out what your focus is, having a goal, and then reassessing your goals regularly to make sure you still want to do what you originally wanted to do.
For sure. And for this final part of this interview, is I know you are also an author, and you wrote a book called The Board Game Family. Can you kind of talk about a little bit about what people can expect from your book and what they can learn?
There it is. it's a game design. It's a game written for parents, and it's
Okay.
really about how you can have positive board gaming experiences at home. So,
Mhm,
part about behavior and
mhm,
how you influence positive behavior to have good game experiences, and it's partly about choosing the right sort of games for your family, because it's not just about my behavior changes your behavior, but it's about what game we're putting on the table to make sure that that experience has the best chance. I mean, I wrote it because I had heard so many people, whenever I talked about games to people who aren't kind of in the game industry or aren't board gamers, like hobby board gamers, they would say, oh, we don't really play games with our kids because they always cheat, or it's sad,
Okay.
or we have to let them win,
Yeah.
or we don't want to read rules, which is the biggest problem. Um, and
Okay.
so
Yeah.
I was very motivated to help
Mm,
people solve those problems. The kind of, you know, they they always cheat kind of
mhm,
problem. How do you solve that? What can you do as the adult in the room
mhm,
to make sure that cheating isn't that attractive an option for the child?
mm,
Are you, for example, with that, you know, are you always rewarding the winner of the game? If you're
mm,
rewarding the winner of the game, even if the reward is you saying, "Oh, well done, that was amazing, great
mhm,
work," whatever, that's a reward. That praise is a reward. So,
mhm,
you know, is your focus as an adult inadvertently creating a situation where the child really wants to win to please you in a way?
mm,
Um, so, or why else do they want to win so much? What is it about it? And what can you do to minimize that cheating when it really has kind of kicked in? How can you create good winners? People that are humble in victory and cheerful in defeat. How do you do that? Well, you model that yourself, and we all know about competitive parents and
mhm.
and how they might choose to play a game. So, and I think also there are a lot of people playing quite terrible games, which exacerbates the problem.
Yeah, and also I think it's also on getting off of the screen since I have 3 kids myself. They
Yeah.
use quite a bit of
It's
electronic as well.
really,
So
really, really hard. It's really hard. The book contains a bunch of tips
mm,
about, okay, so they're not interested in playing a board game because they want to do X, Y, or Z. How can you
yeah.
hook them in? What
Mm,
kinds of things that you do to be stealthy about, how can you crowbar the odd game in and start making it part of the fabric of your
mm,
family?
yeah.
Um, and yeah, that's what the book tries to do, to help parents have positive board gaming as part of their family life.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, thank you so much for sharing that. And as well, wrapping up today's
Yeah,
interview, if you have to share just one piece of advice with someone that's getting started in the toys and game industry, what would
yeah.
that be?
Well, I mean, I've said it already, but think long term. Learn from everybody. Make sure you make those relationships and keep nurturing them with designers and with publishers. That's probably if you actually want to create a career or part, even if it's a side thing that you're doing uh, alongside a regular job, then that's the best way of doing it. If you really want to be part of the community, join all these different things, make, expand your community, be actively part of the design and the publisher community.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. And how can people find you online?
Yep. My website is thedarkimp.com. I'm on Blue Sky at the Dark Imp, and I'm on X still at the moment on Ellie Dix tweets.
I see. Okay, thank you so much. And thank you so much for being on our podcast today.
It's
And for
lovely
our
to.
listeners, thank you for tuning in to this episode of Toy Business Unboxed podcast. We hope you have enjoyed the conversation and find it insightful and inspiring. If you like what you have heard, be sure to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform so you never miss an episode. We really appreciate your support, and we love it if you can leave us a review and share the podcast with your friend and colleague. For more resource, tips, and the latest update within the toys and game industry, visit our website at toy-launch.com. Join our conversation and connect with us on social media using hashtag #ToyBusinessUnbox. We'd love to hear your feedback and suggestion for future episodes. Until next time, keep innovating, keep creating, keep bringing joys to toys. This is Jason Shea signing off on the Toy Business Unbox podcast, and we'll see you in the next episode. Thank you so much, everyone.